Sally, I'm going to start firstly by congratulating you on what I think is a terrific film. It's potent, it's caustically funny, but it also has that undercurrent of tragedy, as you mentioned in your introduction. Could you give us a bit of insight into, what prompted this particular film?
I'm not sure if I've got any insight whatsoever, actually. It's a mystery to me where things come from, but I think I had my ear to the ground and could feel some rumblings somewhere. And I think that the best antidote to desperate times and divided times is laughter. It has a unifying effect and a very cathartic effect. So that's why I was attracted to the idea of comedy circling around a tragedy, and to set it all in one space, in real time, in black and white, and shoot it in 2 weeks.
Can I ask you about the choice of black and white and the shooting? You're working with your regular cinematographer, Alexei Rodionov, and you're working in this, as you say, very confined space, and yet there's such a dynamism to that. So could you talk about the choice of black and white and also working with Alexei?
The choice of black and white is really simple. It's much more colourful. Working with Alexei Rodionov is a great pleasure, Russian DP with a particular way of looking, of searching for the image. What was the rest of the question?
Well, just creating that sense of dynamism in such a confined space.
Well, you find freedom within a cage, and the cage in this case is the frame and the constraints of the environment which allow us to go deep and be very exposed. It's a very exposing situation. There's nowhere to hide, no special effects, no car chases, and no additional locations. So it has a kind of naked feeling, I think, that is very exciting to work with if you fill that with these amazing, extraordinary actors who all bring an incredible dynamism and intelligence to the script and to the whole thing.
Well, like so many of your films, it is a terrific cast. And how did you bring this ensemble together? Where did you start?
Sent them the script, had a meeting, said, let's go.
Well, nothing like a succinct answer for an economic film. Kristin, can I start by asking you? The role of Janet is a terrific one to get your teeth into. Can you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to it, and also working with Sally?
Well, the role was attractive to me because I loved the sort of terrible secret that she carries throughout the film. I like characters that are hiding things. I think it's more fun to play, and she went through such extremes. It was an irresistible part to play, and working with Sally was a huge draw. I mean, I was obviously an admirer of her work up until then, but then when I met her and we started to talk about the characters and about the writing of the script and about the sort of the way that the stories overlapped each other, it just got more and more exciting by the minute. And the idea also of making a film in 2 weeks was thrilling.
Timothy, can I ask you? You're playing very much a foil in this film in the beginning, and then become increasingly explosive as it goes on. Could you tell us a little bit about your interest in this part?
Yeah, well, I'd fortunately worked with Sally before. I had a great time on that. So when this script came up and she sent it to me, met me, and then offered it me, I agreed, and we went for it, and there we are. But I thought I'd grab the chance to work with her again. But what I loved about it was this guy doesn't hardly say anything. He's almost comatose with his silence and his this massive burden of he's carrying with him. And it was worrying because you thought, how on earth am I going to portray this character carrying this? And of course, whack, the camera's right up your router right from the beginning. And Sally's absolute attention to detail and her preparation, we all knew exactly where we were. So when this sophisticated group of people, this urbane, sophisticated people with the moral high ground to a certain degree, the sort of people that we rely on ruling the world for us in the most liberal fashion, decide, because of these revelations in this brilliant script, to unravel them and expose themselves as frightened and terrified examples of humanity. It's just a wonderful thing to be a part of something that unravels and be an instigator of. So, and to work with this bunch of classy depictors is quite a treat. You know?
Cherry and Bruno, a question that's to both of you. One of the things I really admire about the writing is that we get a great sense of you as individual characters, but also of the kind of your couplings, if you like. Can you give us some insight into what work did you do in rehearsals with your partners in crime? It feels like that is a quite accurate phrase in this context. Could you talk to that?
I know, since we're missing our partners tonight, Patty and Emily are shooting both in the deep south, I believe. Well, the minute I had not known Emily, so we immediately called each other on the phone and just started talking about life. And she is a mother, so it was wonderful to have the real McCoy playing the soon-to-be mother of 3 boys. I don't know, it was fun, and this one I just have to say, I kept referring to Sally as she was like a World War II RAF pilot, because this just should not have worked in the amount of time that you had to do this. And it was a breakneck pace right at the very end. You probably had not slept in about 2 weeks, and still you just, on the foggiest night, you just sailed us on home to the runway. I'm going to pass it to Bruno.
Well, my English is so limited, I can only say I had a very good time, or we had a good time, and I am happy. Thank you.
And down to you, Killian, your character here is kind of the catalyst, really, in some ways, the sort of trigger that sets it all off. Can you tell us about your attraction to this part and your preparation for it?
Well, when I read it, I thought it was a beautiful bit of deliberate kind of misdirection, on Sally's part, where you have a character arriving with a gun and chemically and emotionally clearly imbalanced, and then you think he's one thing, but over the course of the film and the story, it turns into something else, and that's really, really good writing, and that's what I'm attracted to, and obviously the idea of working with Sally. So that was really it. And I think with all of these characters, they go through such furious kind of chaotic transformations over the course of the film. But you go, wow, they're just vulnerable, real people at the end of it, all of them. Even though they may have very diametrically opposing views, I find them intensely human at the end.
Other questions in the audience? Don't be shy. Is there one over here? Yep, over here. Thank you.
Hi. This is a question for each of you, I guess, but did Janet pull the trigger at the end?
It doesn't sound like it, but on the other hand, that's when the story finished. For now.
Are there other questions? Yep, one here. Anyone else? And one up the back there. Can we get a microphone up there to you? Yeah.
It's lovely to watch a film that's so to the point and short, but I could have watched another half an hour of it at least. Did you leave much on the cutting room floor?
A little bit, but there wasn't a great deal of fat in this shoot because of the length of the shoot. But I felt very much in the cutting room that brevity was what was necessary, speed and pace, to always try and keep one step ahead of the audience so that everything that transpired was a surprise. And I think I've very, very rarely, if ever, heard people complain that a film is too short. But I've heard a lot of people complain when a film is too long. So I've decided to value everybody's precious time, especially as we're inundated with so much stuff, and go for the shorter approach to length.
At the back here.
First, I wanted to say it was a great film. I really enjoyed it. I don't know how relevant this is, but the choice of music, I was really curious about that. It kind of seemed to set a different tone to what transpired, and I wondered what the thoughts behind that were.
The thought behind the music was to not have a soundtrack at all, but to have Bill's vinyl collection. And that every record that he plays is one that he purchased at some point in his life and was meaningful to him. So it gives us a lot of information about who he has been, what kind of musical journey he's lived through in his life. They also happen to be parts of my collection. And each piece of music is good music, brilliant music often in its own right. A lot of these people like Albert Ayler and so on are sort of the Picassos of music in a way, deconstructing tunes that we think we already know. So it's music to be listened to in the way that Bill has listened to it, rather than being absorbed unconsciously as you might a soundtrack.
Hi.
Could you just stand up for us? It's a bit dark out there. Where are you?
Yep. Hi. I'd like to say it was a fantastic movie. Really, really enjoyed it. It took 2 weeks to shoot. I'd love to know how long it took to write and what changes you might have made during the shoot.
Took a few years to write, on and off. I was writing in parallel with another thing, but I think in my experience anyway, it takes at least a year to write a screenplay. You can write the first draft in a few weeks, but scripts are rewritten really, not just written. And this was so the shoot was like a sprint in the middle of the marathon, followed by a long period of editing.
This one here.
Sorry, thank you for this lovely film. It looked like a lot of fun to make. I just wondered how much rehearsal there was and how much improvisation on set.
We had a week's rehearsal, was it? Or 10 days?
A couple of days, actually, but individual preparation.
Yeah,
each
and
person,
we sort of prepped all together, went to each other's houses, did line runs, and then each of us had a kind of session with Sally to kind of create a sort of backstory, and so we had our sort of secret ammunition, I suppose, to go onto the set, and then about the question about there was no improvisation, zero, none. That you didn't need. I mean, there was none necessary because it was none necessary.
It's such terrific sort of whip-cracking dialogue, and that texture to the dialogue is one of the great kind of pleasures of the film. I don't know if one of you would sort of like to talk about working with that in language terms, because it feels, ferocious and intelligent and really lively.
Well, just to add to what Kristin just said, I mean, Sally really is incredibly concerned about making sure that we feel part of her creative process. And she's very, very conscious about us feeling comfortable and being a part of the creative part of it. So she works so hard on the original script and then invites us in as a part of, and remarkably, you know, I remember saying, you know, her saying to us, well, I was saying to her, you know, are you happy? You think? She said, well, I'm finding out about how it's going to be, which is such a remarkable thing when somebody's worked so, you know, meticulously, forensically on getting something right. So that, in that process, that short period of time we spent with it independently and then together, we, you know, identified what was right and what felt natural and played, although I believe in tonight it got a massive amount of laughs. You know, we all, I think, were determined to play absolutely straight down the line, not as a comedy, but as a real thing. Obviously, understanding that it's a heightened thing, but that was very important in the preparation and the sense of us, this sense of inclusion all together in trying to make something work.
And all of these actors are amazing collaborators, very generous, and each of them risk takers as well. So as the writer, you sort of partly just go into this state of listening and sort of wonder as the thing becomes real that you've struggled with alone before is embodied and taken onto a whole other level by what each person gives individually in this incredibly collaborative way. It was a wonderful experience from my point of view.
Well, I think all of that is very visibly on the screen. My huge congratulations to all of you, and to let everybody know that this team was kind enough to wait. I saw the film at a fantastic screening in Berlin where it premiered back in February for our opportunity to show it here at the London Film Festival. We're really thrilled to have that opportunity, and it sounds like you all loved it very much, so please pass on the word, because our friends at Picture Houses are opening it in the coming days. So please spread the word and join me in congratulating the extraordinary team from the party.